All right, something big just happened, and it's not in California, not in New York, not in some liberal stronghold. It happened in the Deep South, Louisiana. A district that Donald Trump won by 13 points in 2024 just flipped in a shocking way, and not by a little, not by a squeaker, by a landslide. Let's talk about what just went down. In Louisiana's House District 60, Democrat Chastity Verrett Martinez didn't just win, she crushed her Republican opponent, taking about 62% of the vote. That's a 24-point margin. In a district Trump comfortably carried. Let that sink in for a second. This wasn't supposed to happen. Republicans thought this was a safe area, at worst competitive, at best a pickup opportunity. Instead, it turned into a political earthquake. And if this were just one random special election, maybe you could brush it off. Maybe you could say, oh, special elections are weird. But here's the problem for Republicans. This isn't just one race. Since Trump began his second term, Democrats have flipped 26 state legislative seats across the country. 26. That's not a fluke. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. And Louisiana isn't alone. In Texas, yes, Texas, Democrats flipped a state Senate seat in a district Trump won by 17 points. Even more shocking? The Republican candidate outspent the Democrat 20-1, 20-1, and still lost by double digits. That kind of swing doesn't happen because of an ice storm or low turnout. That kind of swing happens when something deeper is shifting. Even Republican leaders are starting to admit this feels different. Ron DeSantis publicly said special elections can be quirky, but then he also acknowledged that a swing of this magnitude can't just be dismissed. When politicians start trying to downplay something while also quietly warning their party, you know the alarm bells are ringing behind closed doors. So what's going on? A big part of this story comes down to Trump's base. For years, his political strength came from non-college educated voters, especially older white working-class voters. That group powered his victories. That was his foundation. But now, that foundation looks shaky. Back in 2024, Trump won voters without a college degree by about 14 points. Today, his net approval with that same group is underwater by 9 points. That's a 23-point shift. A collapse like that isn't small. It's seismic. And when you look ahead to congressional races, the numbers get even more concerning for Republicans. In 2024, Republicans won non-college voters by 13 points. Now, they're only ahead by about 4. You can count that margin on one hand. That's not dominance, that's vulnerability. Meanwhile, Democrats are dominating among college-educated voters by roughly 20 points. So if Republicans are losing ground with their base and still struggling with college voters, the math starts getting uncomfortable real fast. Then there's the economy. A new poll shows 59% of voters disapprove of Trump's handling of the economy. That's his worst economic rating since he first took office back in 2017. And the economy has always been one of his strongest talking points. If voters are souring on that, it changes everything. You can feel it in interviews with longtime Republican voters. Some of them, people who voted for Trump in multiple elections, are now publicly expressing regret. They're saying they feel misled. They're frustrated about jobs, healthcare access, immigration tactics, and the overall tone of leadership. When members of your own base start apologizing on national television for supporting you, that's not just political noise, that's erosion. And remember, these special elections are happening in areas that were once considered safely red. If Democrats are overperforming by an average of 12 points in these races, what happens in true battleground districts? What happens in places where Republicans only won by 3 or 4 points last cycle? That's why political analysts across the spectrum are calling this a wake-up call ahead of the 2026 midterms. Midterms are often about enthusiasm, they're about turnout, they're about which base is fired up and which one is tired. Right now, Democrats look energized. They're flipping seats in places that haven't elected Democrats in decades. Republicans, on the other hand, are facing declining approval numbers and shrinking margins among key voter groups. If you're the GOP, this isn't just about one Louisiana district. It's about trajectory. It's about momentum. And politics is often about perception. When voters sense a shift, it can snowball. Now, does this mean Democrats automatically win big in 2026? No. Politics is unpredictable. The national environment can change quickly. Economic numbers can shift. International events can reshape the narrative overnight. But here's the reality. When you see a 24-point blowout in a district Trump won by 13, when you see a 30-point swing in Texas despite massive spending advantages, when you see approval ratings underwater with your core voters, you don't ignore that. You reassess. Because if these trends hold, Republicans could be walking into a midterm cycle where even safe districts aren't safe anymore. And that's the part that should really grab attention. This isn't happening in blue cities. It's happening in the Deep South, in Texas, in districts built on Republican strength. So the big question now is simple. Is this just a temporary backlash, or is it the beginning of a larger realignment? If enthusiasm continues to drop among non-college voters, if economic dissatisfaction remains high, if Democrats keep outperforming expectations, then 2026 could look very different from what many predicted. Politics moves fast, narratives shift, but sometimes special elections act like early warning systems. And right now the warning lights are flashing bright red for the GOP. What do you think? Is this just a blip, or is something bigger brewing beneath the surface? Let me know your thoughts below, and if you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because the road to 2026 just got a whole lot more interesting.